You need to know this. A police crackdown against the Occupy Wall Street movement may have resulted in the death of an unborn child. 19-year-old Jennifer Fox was in the Occupy Seattle crowd last Tuesday when police moved in to break up the occupation. Fox pleaded with the cops to let her through the crowd because she was pregnant, but the officers didn't listen. Instead, they went into full brutality mode, and she claims one officer rose his boot up and kicked her in the stomach, and then another officer wheeled his bike into her pregnant stomach. But they weren't finished. Police then doused Fox with their chemical weapon, pepper spray, once again ignoring her cries that she was pregnant. Here is Fox shortly after the incident.
Yeah, I'm calling. She's white. Honey, you got a name? Jennifer. Her name is Jennifer Fox.
Jesse, did you get hit too?
5 days later, Fox suffered a miscarriage. Doctors say it was trauma to her stomach and the stress of being pepper sprayed that likely contributed to the death of her unborn baby. She had plans to name her child Miracle. So what is it about the Occupy Wall Street movement that seems to be bringing out the dark side, at least in some of our cities, of our law enforcement and criminal justice system? To answer that, retired Philadelphia police captain Ray Lewis joins me from New York. He was one of the 300-plus people arrested during last Thursday's day of action. Captain Lewis, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. When you were arrested in New York City at the Occupy Wall Street protest, what did the signs say that you were carrying? I'm curious.
The sign said, NYPD, please watch the documentary Inside Job, then join us.
Oh, very interesting.
Because after watching this documentary, no one could not join the 99%, except the 1%.
Yeah, and for people who don't know what you and I are talking about here, Inside Job is a brilliant documentary on how basically the banksters took down America, took down the world, and made off with billions in their pockets and have never been prosecuted for it. Is that what provoked you to put on your uniform and go down and join the Occupy Wall Street protest?
Well, there were a number of different reasons. The main reason is that I just have a lot of empathy for anything that suffers, whether it's a human, animal, amphibian, doesn't matter. And I saw a lot of people suffering down there, and they were suffering for justice, for social justice, for everybody, not just for themselves, for everybody. And that was a real inspiration to me. And I just felt, you know, I'm living the good life here, but I just was moved. They inspired me. Their conviction inspired me to come down and join them.
We're seeing what appears to be increasing numbers of events where police are using chemical weapons and the so-called rubber bullets against people who are not explicitly threatening to them. As a career police officer, what are your thoughts on when and where this non-lethal force should be used?
Well, the non-lethal force, all force, should only be used to the bare minimum to subdue an offender, to stop a violent act. And once you reach that level of force where you're effective in subduing the offender, that's it, it's over. There's no need to go any higher than that.
And do you have a message for your brother and sisters in active duty blue?
Well, my message to the brothers and sisters in active duty is the same to the protesters. And that is, I would like to start humanizing both sides towards each other. And by that I mean, I would like the protesters to realize there's a human side to the cops, and the cops to realize there's a human side to the protesters.
And how might each begin to bring that out in the other?
Excellent question. By starting a dialogue. And that dialogue has got to be started with the protesters trying to humanize the police officers in letting them know that they are human beings with feelings and problems just like them. The protesters have to start the dialogue because at these barricade lines, because the police are trained not to engage in discussion with the protesters, not even to look at them. And that's for a reason. It's a tactical reason, to not be distracted. The police cannot be distracted when they're observing a crowd, because it's a tactic by demonstrators to distract the police so that they can be successful with another action. Subsequently, the police will be staring straight ahead. They will not be looking at you when you're talking to them. But obviously, that's usually interpreted as an insult. It is not. They're doing their job when they're doing that. They were trained to do that. That does not mean, just because they're not looking at you, does not mean they don't hear you. Subsequently, I would like each protester to approach a police officer and not engage them in conversation, because the officer can't do that, but to talk to the officer. And I say talk to and not talk with, because they can't talk with yet, but they can talk to the officer. And I know I talked to a number of protesters and they have no idea, what am I going to say to him? I'm outraged with him. He represents the 1%. And there's one thing that every single protester can say to the police officer, and that is the protester can tell the police officer why he or she is there.
That's absolutely brilliant. Captain Ray Lewis, thanks so much for being with us, and thank you for your service to your city and to the nation, and for showing up. It's an extraordinary thing you did. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.